I'm back with our friend Trish Regan, former host of Trish Regan Primetime on Fox Business, now the founder of Trish Regan Intel, and the host of the Trish Regan Show. Trish, you were talking about the fact that with inflation, it's eroding the value of people's money. And this is nowhere felt more keenly than with gas prices. I mean, we're talking about $80, $90 to fill up your truck. And think of what that does to someone who's operating on a $15 an hour wage, how difficult it is just to pay those gas prices. Isn't this going to be politically very damaging for the Biden administration? And why is it that they seem so blithely committed to keep going on the same disastrous path?
It's a great, great question. And your wonderful wife, who knows a whole lot about Venezuela, like I do, knows that, listen, socialist policies aren't always well thought out, right? I mean, I think that the idea here is if we can just appease the people in the here and now, it'll be okay. We'll get it'll be great because we got reelected. But there's no actual real thought going into this. Had there been, we wouldn't be in this situation to begin with. So you've got Joe Biden out there saying, oh, it's corporations' fault. It's the energy companies. They must be gouging consumers. Oh, it's the fact that, the companies aren't paying enough in the way of taxes. It's the rich that aren't paying their fair share. I mean, even Jeff Bezos, who's I would consider the Washington Post, a friend of the administration, called him out on that one. So they're grasping at straws. But basically, I think the bottom line is they keep thinking if we can just give out checks, if we can just put more money into the hands of the people, it'll all be okay. Well, it's not okay because things have to have value. And they were throwing out the bolivars in Venezuela because they were worth. That's the path that we risk on. Look, I mean, we got some advantages. We're the world's reserve currency, right? So we don't have the same risks that, say, a 2-bit country with a socialist dictator regime is going to have. But that said, we should respect the fact that dollars need to have value. So you just can't print them. I would think, Dinesh, sort of selfishly, the Biden administration ought to be thinking about the ramifications because people don't like inflation. And we've seen it, in many situations before. Just go back to the 70s. It's like Carter all over again, for goodness sake.
I mean, with Carter, we had stagflation, right, which was stagnant growth combined with inflation. And now that brought Reagan to office because people were like, we've had it with this guy. He's a fool. Now, admittedly, when Reagan came in, Reagan had to ally with Paul Volcker, at that time the Federal Reserve chairman. And they had to sort of squeeze inflation out of the economy, which wasn't all that easy. If I remember, Trish, 1982, there was a deep crater, a deep recession. And it wasn't until the middle of 83 that the economy turned back around and then Reagan was comfortably elected in 84. So it seems like the lesson of all this is that you can fix it, but it's not that easy and it's not without pain.
Right. But if you're Joe Biden, you want to, of course, like selfishly, you want to get elected again. So I would think the problem is too much sort of short-sightedness in the here. I mean, the idea that he wants more COVID stimulus. I mean, come on, like, right? He actually wants more of it. The answer for some reason is always to just print money and hand it out to the people. And we have seen over time, all around the world, by the way, that system just doesn't work. And so we are in real time seeing the ramifications. A lot of people say, it's going to be hard for our children or our grandchildren. Yes. But you know what? It's also hard for us right now as Americans. And I think that the sort of sad irony of this, Dinesh, is that he is campaigning on this promise to help the people, everyday Americans. And yet what is he doing? He is crushing the middle class. He is crushing poor Americans, and he is making it harder and harder and harder for them to get by. We saw the results in Walmart's earnings, in Target's earnings. What are they telling us? People are up against it. They don't have the extra money to spend. And let's be clear, we need that middle class, right? That's the whole foundation of our economy. That's the success of our country. So when you crush the middle class, Joe Biden, you are crushing all of us. You are crushing the stock market. You are crushing companies. And you are crushing the voters that you promised you would make their life better.
I mean, one of the points that Bezos made, if I remember, is he said, listen, basically Biden was moderately saved by Joe Manchin, that if it were not for Manchin and Biden had his way, he would have put another $2 or $3 trillion into the economy, and you can only imagine the effect of that.
Yeah. I mean, it's like a thesis that maybe everybody in Washington, D.C., that goes to work in Washington, D.C., whether on the Hill or in the White House, they need to just sit down and take an Econ 101 class, right? Or have a better understanding of how this stuff works. And then again, the cynic in me is like, maybe they do, and they just don't care because they think if we can just give out money, we'll look like heroes. I mean, there are other politicians around the world that have tried that, and it worked for them for a little while, but ultimately their economies totally failed. So that could be part of the thinking. Also, I've been disturbed by the new press secretary. She was asked about inflation and the economy, some of the things that Bezos said. And it's like she just had no clue, absolutely no clue how taxes and the economy work. Let me just point out, during the Trump administration, we had record tax revenues, the highest tax revenues this country has ever collected after he reduced taxes. I mean, that hard, and yet they make it hard for themselves, and they make it hard for the country, and they make it hard for everyday that just want to be able to take care of their families and go to work and be able to save a little for retirement someday.
Trish, excellent discussion, and thank you so much for joining me to talk about all this, and we'll see how we get out of it if we do. Thank you very much, Trish. I really appreciate it.
Always good to see you, Dinesh. Thank you.